Hey everyone, and welcome back to another deep dive.
Huh.
We're always on the lookout for fascinating trends in education, and
Oh, absolutely.
and today's topic is one that's really generating a lot of buzz.
Yeah, I've been seeing this everywhere lately.
Right. It's all about contemplative practices in the classroom.
Mm.
So we're diving into this 2015 article titled Contemplation in the Classroom: A New Direction for Improving Childhood Education.
Yeah.
And um, this article explores why more and more schools are starting to incorporate things like meditation and yoga into their curriculums.
Interesting.
Yeah, and the goal is to help kids develop, uh, those crucial self-management skills that, are really essential for success,
Yeah.
both inside and outside the classroom. So in this deep dive, we're going to break down what these practices actually look like in a school setting
Okay.
and what the early research is telling us about their potential benefits for kids.
Sounds fascinating. I'm
Yeah,
ready to dive in.
me too. So one of the things that really struck me when I was reading this article was just how important self-regulation is for a child's development.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, it's something we all kind of intuitively know, right?
Right.
Like kids who can manage their emotions, focus their attention,
Yeah,
tend to do better in school and life and everything. But
totally.
the authors of this article really lay out some compelling evidence for just how fundamental self-regulation is. They talk about how it's linked to
I
everything
mean, everything.
from, how prepared a child is for kindergarten
Right.
all the way up to, their academic performance later on,
Uh,
even things like socioeconomic status
all right.
and even the likelihood of
Oh, wow.
having run-ins with the law later in life.
It really is far-reaching.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
So it's really highlighting, why it's so important to find effective ways to support these skills early on.
Yeah, the earlier the better, I think. Yeah.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
and that's really where these contemplative practices come in.
Mm-hmm.
So the core argument of this article is that these practices like meditation and yoga could be a really powerful tool for actually strengthening uh, self-regulation abilities in children.
It's almost like training the brain, right?
Exactly.
Like a workout for your self-control.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. So today we're going to unpack what these contemplative practices look like when you adapt them for a school setting.
I'm really curious about that.
Yeah. And we're going to move beyond, any kind of purely spiritual associations.
Right, right.
And really focus on the potential benefits that the research is starting to uncover in
And-
areas like attention, emotional well-being,
Yeah.
and even how kids interact with each other.
So let's get down to it. What exactly are these contemplative practices when we're talking about using them with kids?
Yeah, that's a great place to start. And I think it's important to clarify right off the bat that when we talk about using these practices in schools,
Hmm.
the focus is not on, religion or spiritual enlightenment or anything like that.
No, not at all.
It's really about the practical secular benefits.
Hmm.
So things like helping children learn to focus their attention, manage their emotions, and develop what the article calls pro-social attitudes.
I like that. Pro-social attitudes. What exactly does that mean?
Yeah, so pro-social attitudes, they include things like compassion,
Okay.
empathy, kindness, really those qualities that help kids, build positive relationships and thrive in a social setting.
Right. Those are essential skills.
Totally. So at its core, what does contemplation actually mean in this context?
Yeah, break it down for us.
Okay, so the article describes it as really paying attention in a purposeful and sustained way.
Hmm.
So it could involve directing your focus inwards, noticing your own thoughts, your feelings, the sensations in your body, or even just the feeling of your breath.
So like tuning into yourself.
Exactly. Or it could be focusing outwards, really listening to the sounds around you, observing what's happening in your environment, or even focusing intently on a specific object.
Interesting. So it's that intentional act of bringing your awareness to something specific.
Exactly. And it's not just what you're paying attention to, but how you're paying attention.
Right.
The authors emphasize the importance of cultivating a mindset of openness, acceptance, and genuine curiosity towards whatever comes up during the practice.
So like not judging yourself for whatever thoughts or feelings pop up.
Right. It's about approaching your experiences with a sense of non-judgmental awareness.
I can see how that would be beneficial for kids, especially. They can be so hard on themselves.
Absolutely.
So, when we hear contemplative practices, a lot of us might picture, someone sitting in quiet meditation.
Right.
Is that all it is, or is there more to it?
Yeah, so that's definitely part of it. The article refers to that as formal practice,
Yeah.
but it's actually a much broader range of activities, especially when we're talking about children.
Hmm.
So it can involve things like focusing intently on a specific object,
Mhm.
maybe a stone, a flower, something with interesting textures or colors.
I
It
see.
can be spending quiet time in nature,
Yeah,
really observing the sights, sounds, and smells around you,
I love that.
or even engaging with art in a mindful way.
Oh, interesting.
So really paying attention to the colors, shapes, and textures of a painting or sculpture, for example.
So it's all about bringing that structured and intentional awareness to your experiences,
Exactly.
whether they're internal or external.
Right.
So it seems like practice is a pretty key concept here.
It really is. And the article talks about how when we repeatedly engage in these mental and sometimes physical activities,
Mm.
it can actually lead to changes in our brain's wiring.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So by consistently practicing contemplation, we strengthen the neural pathways that support those behaviors, making them become more natural over time.
Like building a muscle.
Exactly. It's like learning any new skill. The more you do it, the easier it becomes.
Right.
And that leads to this really fascinating idea that these contemplative exercises can actually act as a kind of neural training regime, specifically for boosting self-regulation skills.
I love that idea.
Yeah. The authors suggest that by regularly encouraging children to reflect on what they're experiencing, we're essentially strengthening the brain circuits that are
Hmm.
involved in self-awareness and control.
So what might we see as a result of this neural exercise? Like, how might it actually change behavior?
That's a great question. And the article suggests that by repeatedly practicing observing our experiences with an open and accepting attitude, we might actually become less prone to reacting automatically or impulsively.
Hmm.
We
Yeah.
start to create a little bit of space between an event and our reaction to it.
That's huge.
Yeah. So instead of just, flying off the handle when something frustrating happens,
Yeah.
we have a moment to pause, to reflect, and to choose a more skillful response.
I can see how that would be so beneficial in a classroom setting.
Oh, absolutely. And on the flip side, repeatedly practicing holding our attention, even for short periods, can actually strengthen the brain circuits that are responsible for focus.
Right.
So the thinking is that kids who regularly engage in these practices might gradually develop the ability to concentrate for longer periods before their minds start to wander.
Makes sense. So we've talked about the potential benefits, but how do you actually put this into practice in a classroom full of kids? I mean, what's actually feasible and engaging for them?
Yeah, and that's a really important question because what works for an adult meditating for 30 minutes in a quiet room is probably not going to work for a 6-year-old.
Right. Totally different developmental stages.
Exactly. And the article acknowledges this. It highlights a variety of programs that have been specifically designed for children and adolescents.
Okay.
They actually even include a table listing examples like iRest for Kids, Mindful Schools, Mind Up, and several others.
So there are already programs out there doing this. That's interesting.
And what's really interesting about these programs is how they adapt the fundamental principles of contemplative practice to make them developmentally appropriate.
How so?
So for children, lessons tend to be much shorter. They often interweave brief periods of formal meditation with activities that encourage self-reflection and focus.
Hmm.
So this could involve things like focusing on their breath, noticing any sensations in their body, identifying their emotions, or observing their thoughts.
So kind of like a sampler platter of different techniques.
Exactly. And these sessions are typically guided by instructors who have their own personal experience with contemplative practice.
Makes sense. It's like anything else. You want to learn from someone who knows what they're doing.
Right?
So how brief are we talking? I mean, what's a realistic time frame for a kid's meditation session?
Yeah, that's a good question. And the article mentions that a guided meditation for younger children might only last a few minutes.
Wow, that's short.
Yeah, much shorter than what an adult might do. And they often incorporate props or activities to help keep the children's attention focused.
Okay.
So, for example, they might have young children lie down and place a small stuffed animal on their stomach.
Cute.
Yeah, and this helps them visually and physically focus on the rise and fall of their breath as they breathe in and out.
That's a great idea.
Or they might use a Hoberman sphere, that expanding and contracting toy
Yeah,
synchronized with deep breaths to make the rhythm more tangible.
I see.
So these kinds of objects can help make the abstract idea of breathing more concrete and engaging for young minds.
Right. And there are also exercises designed to sharpen their auditory attention.
Absolutely, like the classic sound of the bell activity.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that one.
So the children are asked to listen intently as a bell is rung and then fades away into silence, focusing their awareness on the present moment through sound.
I love that one. It's so simple, but so powerful.
Yeah.
And the use of stories and metaphors is another really clever adaptation.
Oh, absolutely.
The article gives an example of the iRest for Kids program using the fairy tale, The Princess and the Pea.
Oh, that's a good one.
Right. And they might give the child a cold pea to hold and ask questions that direct their attention to the sensory experience.
Hmm.
Like, is it smooth or bumpy, warm or cold, heavy or light?
I see. So it's about using a familiar story
Yeah.
to make those internal sensations more accessible and relatable.
Exactly. Because, even for adults, consciously tuning into that constant stream of thoughts and feelings can be challenging.
It can be.
But children often have a much stronger connection to their immediate sensory experiences.
Mm,
So many of these activities intentionally guide their attention toward those physical sensations as a way to build that foundation of awareness.
right. And that makes a lot of sense developmentally, right?
It does.
Because, for young children, the world is so much about their senses.
Yeah.
So it's meeting them where they are
Right.
and then gradually, building from there.
Yeah. And that mindful eating exercise you mentioned earlier, that's another great example.
Yeah, so the raisin exercise is a really common one.
Okay.
Kids are encouraged to really pay attention to every aspect of eating a single raisin. Its color, its texture, the way it feels in their hand, and then the taste as they slowly chew it.
Mm.
It's a very gentle and accessible introduction to the idea of paying close attention to an experience.
Right. And it can be a stepping stone to noticing more abstract internal experiences like emotions or thoughts.
Exactly.
So they start with the concrete and then move towards the abstract.
Right. And that connection between physical sensations and emotions can even be made explicit.
How so?
So after focusing on the physical characteristics of the food, children might be asked to think about, the colors, texture, or temperature that might represent how they're feeling emotionally.
Mm. That's a really interesting way to make that connection.
Yeah. And it's a great way to help kids start to build that internal awareness of their emotions.
So we've seen all these really interesting ways to adapt contemplative practices for the classroom.
Yeah.
But what are the real hoped-for benefits? I mean, when it comes to self-regulation, how does all this connect back to those important outcomes like academic success and well-being that we talked about earlier?
That's a crucial point.
Mhm.
And the article frames it as really complementing and enhancing our existing educational goals.
Okay.
We already place a strong emphasis on academic skills,
Right.
but there's a growing understanding that social emotional skills and executive function are just as important.
They're crucial, yeah.
And self-regulation is at the heart of a child's ability to adapt to new situations, to solve problems, and to really thrive both inside and outside the classroom.
Makes sense. So let's break those down a bit. Let's start with executive function. I mean, what exactly is that, and how do these practices play a role?
Okay, so executive function, it's that top-down, effortful control over our own behavior. It encompasses things like planning, staying focused on a task, remembering instructions, and managing our thoughts and actions effectively.
I see. So it's like the CEO of our brain,
Exactly.
making sure everything runs smoothly.
Right. And one really key aspect of executive function, according to the work of researchers like Philip David Zalazzo,
Okay.
is the ability to reflect.
To reflect. Okay.
So that iterative process of thinking before we act,
Mm-hmm.
Considering different options,
Yeah.
weighing potential consequences.
Right.
And they argue that this capacity for reflection is foundational and underpins things like cognitive flexibility, which is our ability to switch between different tasks or ways of thinking.
Okay.
Inhibitory control, which is our ability to resist impulses.
Right.
And working memory, which is our ability to hold and manipulate information in our minds.
So it's really a core set of skills.
Yeah, it's like the control panel for our brains.
I like that analogy.
And this is precisely where contemplative practices come in. Because they often require that inward focus and sustained self-reflection, they're essentially giving the prefrontal cortex, the area of the brain, largely responsible for executive function, a workout. It's like physical exercise for that part of our brain.
So these practices are strengthening those executive function muscles.
Exactly. And they're doing it in a way that's engaging and accessible for kids.
The mindful smelling game you mentioned earlier is a great example.
Yeah, so By asking children to really notice and reflect on different scents and the memories or associations they evoke, we're potentially strengthening their ability to engage in deeper reflection in other more challenging situations.
I see. So it's like a fun way to train those reflection skills.
Right, and the research seems to support this idea. The article points to studies with adults and older children indicating that long-term engagement in meditation is associated with improved attentional control. Even short-term mindfulness training has been shown to lead to improvements on various tasks designed to measure executive function.
Interesting. So there's evidence for both long-term and short-term benefits.
Yeah. And importantly, there's also a growing body of research specifically looking at children.
Mm.
Studies have found that mindfulness meditation can lead to improvements in executive function in school-aged children, a reduction in attention-related problems in children with psychiatric diagnoses, and even an improvement in sustained attention in general community samples of kids.
Wow.
So this suggests that these practices could be particularly beneficial for children who might be struggling with these skills.
That's great news.
Yeah. And they highlight a specific study from 2012 by Johnson and colleagues,
Okay.
which found that even a relatively brief mindfulness training program led to improved performance on something called the flanker task in preschool children.
The flanker task, what's that?
So the flanker task is a common way to assess selective attention and inhibitory control,
Yep.
those key components of executive function.
Right.
So it's pretty direct evidence of a potential impact.
Very cool. So what about emotion regulation? How do these practices help kids manage their emotions?
That's another key area.
Mm-hmm.
And the article defines emotion regulation as our ability to manage the emotions that arise in response to different events, including how we experience and express those emotions.
Okay.
So it's not about suppressing emotions.
Yeah.
It's about learning to recognize, understand, and respond to them in healthy ways.
Makes sense.
And strong emotion regulation skills are really foundational for healthy social development.
How so?
They're linked to things like being socially competent with peers,
Right.
having the capacity for empathy, and building strong relationships.
I can see that.
Plus, as the article points out, being able to manage your emotions effectively really helps you stay focused and motivated, even when you're experiencing strong feelings.
Mm.
Like excitement before a big event or frustration when you're tackling a challenging task.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it's about being able to ride those emotional waves without getting swept away by them.
Right. And on the flip side, difficulties with emotion regulation are often associated with mental health challenges and can even negatively impact academic performance.
Exactly.
So finding effective ways to help children develop these skills is really crucial.
Absolutely. And once again, the research suggests that contemplative practices can be a valuable tool here.
So what kind of research are we talking about?
Studies across different age groups, adults, adolescents, and children, have demonstrated improvements in emotion regulation following engagement in these practices.
Interesting.
So it seems to be beneficial across the board.
Hmm.
The article mentions a study with adults where mindfulness training was shown to reduce the impact of negative stimuli on cognitive tasks.
Okay.
They even observed changes in the participants' physiological responses, like their heart rate and skin conductance.
Wow, so it's not just subjective, it's measurable.
Yeah.
And in adults struggling with social anxiety, mindfulness-based stress reduction led to reductions in anxiety, depression, and rumination, alongside neural changes that indicated improved emotion regulation.
Yeah, that's a really promising finding.
And what about the research with kids? What has that shown?
So with children, mindfulness training has been shown to lower anxiety levels in various populations, from children with psychiatric diagnoses to those living in inner-city environments and even typically developing students. It also appears to help reduce symptoms of depression, including rumination and intrusive thoughts.
So there's evidence for a range of benefits.
Yeah, and the authors propose that these contemplative exercises can actually help shape the neural circuitry that underlies both our automatic and our more controlled responses to emotions.
Okay,
What?
unpack that for us.
So by cultivating that non-reactive awareness of our experiences from moment to moment, we might become less likely to be swept away by those immediate emotional reactions. We have a moment to pause before we react. Plus, by improving our ability to reflect on our thoughts and feelings, these practices could give children more of that top-down control, allowing them to consider different ways to respond in emotionally charged situations.
So it's like they have more choices in how they react.
Exactly. Instead of just, reacting impulsively, they can choose a more skillful response.
I like that. And the repeated act of reflecting on emotions during contemplative practice, could also strengthen the connections between the prefrontal cortex, that brain region involved in higher level control, and the limbic system, which plays a key role in processing emotions.
Right.
So, this strengthening of these neural pathways could provide long lasting support for emotion regulation.
Absolutely. It's like building a bridge between the thinking brain and the feeling brain.
I like that. And the iRest for Kids program has a great example of this in practice.
Tell me about it.
They use things like fabric swatches or small stones with different textures and ask children to match them to how they feel when they're experiencing a particular emotion.
Hmm.
They then talk about where in their body they feel that emotion.
So it's about connecting the physical sensations to the emotional experience.
Exactly. It helps them become more aware of their internal landscape and develop more intentional responses.
Right. So we've talked about executive function and emotion regulation, but what about perspective taking? How do these practices help kids understand and appreciate different points of view?
That's a really important one. And the article actually uses a pretty broad definition of perspective taking, encompassing a range of metacognitive abilities.
Okay.
So it includes self-awareness of our own thought processes, what's known as theory of mind,
Okay.
which is understanding that other people have different thoughts, feelings, and beliefs than we do.
Right.
Social perspective taking, and the ability to flexibly shift between our own viewpoint and someone else's.
So it's really about seeing the world through multiple lenses.
Exactly. And it's pretty clear why perspective taking is so important. I mean, it's foundational for developing empathy, compassion, and building healthy interpersonal relationships.
Couldn't agree more.
And the article points out that contemplative practices inherently ask children to reflect on their own internal states and experiences.
Hmm.
When they're encouraged to describe their emotional reactions, they're actively engaging in that self-awareness.
Right.
And some exercises even challenge them to consider the opposite of an emotion they're currently feeling, to think about where they might feel that opposite emotion in their body and what its texture might be.
Interesting.
This back and forth practice helps build that flexible perspective-taking skill.
I see. So it's about expanding their emotional vocabulary and understanding the full spectrum of human experience.
Exactly. And this increased awareness of their own internal world can naturally lead to a greater understanding of what others might be feeling in similar situations, which can foster empathy.
Mm.
They start to realize that other people might not experience the world in the exact same way they do.
Right, and that their perspective is just one of many.
Exactly. And some contemplative practices even directly target social perspective taking. The Mind Up program, for example, has an activity where children retell familiar fairy tales from the perspective of the antagonist.
Oh, I like that.
Right.
Mm.
So, thinking about what might have motivated the wolf in Little Red Riding Hood,
Mm.
by actively considering these alternative viewpoints and motivations, they're building empathy for characters they might not usually sympathize with.
That's a really clever way to do it.
And research with adults has shown that engaging in contemplative practices can enhance metacognition, which is basically the ability to think about your own thinking.
Okay.
And this ability to take a more detached view of one's own thoughts and emotions, sometimes called reperceiving, has been linked to positive psychological outcomes.
Mm.
Studies have even found increased empathy and decreased levels of anxiety and depression in medical students who participated in mindfulness training.
That's encouraging.
And while the research specifically examining the impact of contemplative practices on perspective taking in children is still a developing area, the initial findings are encouraging.
Well, that's good to hear. So we've covered a lot of ground here. Executive function, emotion regulation, perspective taking.
Yeah, we have.
Are there any other potential benefits that the article highlights?
There are,
Yeah.
and they're pretty interesting.
I'm all ears.
One of them is the development of self-compassion.
Hmm.
Self-compassion is basically about being kind and understanding toward yourself when you experience pain or failure,
Okay.
rather than being overly self-critical.
Right. So treating yourself with the same kindness and understanding that you would offer a good friend.
Exactly. And it also involves recognizing that negative experiences are a normal part of the human experience.
Makes sense.
And interestingly, self-compassion has been linked to a range of positive psychological traits, including wisdom, a greater sense of initiative, curiosity, happiness, optimism, and overall psychological well-being.
Wow, so it's not just about feeling good. It's about thriving.
Exactly. And the authors suggest that by helping children become more aware of their experiences without judgment and observe their thoughts and emotions without immediately reacting to them, contemplative exercises can create a foundation for developing self-compassion.
Hmm.
Some specific exercises, like Karen Kaiser Greenland's Friendly Wishes activity, directly encourage children to send kind thoughts and well wishes to themselves and others.
That's sweet.
It is, and research with adults has shown that meditation-based interventions can indeed increase self-compassion in healthcare professionals and counseling students,
Okay.
which offers a promising indication that these early contemplative activities could help cultivate that same sense of kindness towards oneself in children from a young age.
I love that. So self-compassion, that's one additional benefit.
Yeah.
Are there any others?
There is another one that's particularly interesting.
Okay, what is it?
The potential link between contemplative practices and moral development.
Oh, wow.
The article highlights that many meditative traditions actually consider the cultivation of ethical behavior and moral maturity as an integral aspect of contemplative practice.
That makes sense.
They outline several potential ways in which contemplative practices might enhance ethical behavior.
Okay, like what?
Well, things like fostering a greater awareness of the negative consequences that can result from unethical actions,
I see.
reducing negative motivations like greed and anger,
Mm.
strengthening positive emotions such as love and compassion,
Okay.
cultivating a sense of altruism,
Right.
and fostering a stronger sense of connection and identification with others.
So it's really about developing a more holistic sense of ethics.
Exactly. And there's some preliminary research that suggests a connection here. For example, among individuals who practice transcendental meditation, there's been a correlation observed between how long they've been practicing and their scores on measures of moral development.
Hmm.
Additionally, mindfulness practice has even been shown to improve ethical decision-making in college students.
That's pretty compelling.
It is.
So self-compassion, moral development, any other potential benefits we should touch on?
You know, there's one more that I think is particularly relevant to our discussion today.
Okay, lay it on me.
The potential relationship between contemplative practices and both creativity and learning.
Hmm.
They suggest that by fostering a sense of inquisitiveness and curiosity, these exercises might encourage children to utilize their attention and self-control in more exploratory and creative ways.
Interesting. So it's not just about sitting still and being quiet. It's about using those skills to fuel creativity.
Exactly.
So what kind of activities might we see in the classroom that connect these practices to creativity and learning?
Well, for example, activities that encourage children to describe their emotions not just verbally, but also through art or by associating them with specific colors or textures.
Hmm, I like that.
These kinds of exercises can really tap into different ways of understanding and expressing themselves, potentially complementing more purely logical or analytical approaches to learning.
Right, so it's about engaging the whole brain.
Exactly. And when information is processed in a more reflective and engaged manner, which is what contemplative practices tend to encourage, it's more likely to be deeply integrated and retained.
That makes sense.
So, by helping children become fully present and curious in their learning, these exercises could foster a more active and effective style of learning.
Right, and it's really about moving away from that passive model of education where kids are just sitting there absorbing information.
Yeah, exactly. And there's even some early research with adolescents and young adults suggesting that engaging in meditation can actually cultivate creativity.
Wow, so it's not just a hunch. There's some evidence to support it.
There is.
So we've covered a lot of really exciting potential benefits, but it's important to acknowledge that this is still a relatively new and evolving area of research.
Oh, for sure.
And the article rightly points out several important directions for future studies to take.
Definitely. So what are some of those key areas that need further exploration?
Well, for one, they emphasize the need to really pinpoint the specific effects of different types of contemplative exercises.
Okay.
For example, how might the impact of concentration-based practices differ from the impact of mindfulness-based practices on various aspects of child development?
Right, that's an important distinction.
And they stress the importance of utilizing age-appropriate, reliable, and valid tools for assessment.
Mm.
So future research should aim to gather data from multiple perspectives: the child's own subjective experience, reports from parents and teachers, and even more objective measures like behavioral tasks and physiological indicators
Yeah.
like brain activity.